enterprise architecture versus platform architecture versus solutions architecture. In this video, we will focus on the enterprise architect role, the platform architect role, and the solutions architect role. Because people treat their architect careers like they're all the same. But doing solution architect work when you're an enterprise architect will cost you promotions as well as your career. Focusing on solutions architecture by comparison when it's your job as a solutions architect is great. Or focusing on enterprise architecture when your job as an enterprise architect is also great. So today I'm going to take all the guesswork out of what we do as enterprise architects versus platform architects versus solutions architects. I'll talk about what we focus on and how success is measured from an executive architecture lens, because that's how your career will be measured. And I wish you to have the best of success in your architecture career. I know I've enjoyed my 25-year architecture career. So here's the mental method that I would typically look at. So if you look at the enterprise architect role, enterprise architecture is deciding where the business is going to be going, the entire business. Now, if we look at platform architecture, it's typically designing what foundations the business will run on. So a platform architect might be a cloud architect focusing on the organization's cloud computing infrastructure, or they could be a security architect focused on the organization's security strategy, for example, but typically focused on one domain, typically a subject matter expert on that domain. And then we look at the solutions architect, and that is a completely different focus. The solutions architect is focused on maybe a specific architecture pattern or a single workload. Where will I host this website? Where the enterprise architect is focused on the entire business, and the platform architect, like the cloud architect, is focused on all the things that are going to be on all the clouds that organization has, whether they be public clouds, private clouds, or a bunch of them put together like most enterprises. So let's first talk about enterprise architecture. What do we focus as an enterprise architects? What's the main focus of the enterprise architect career? The job for us is alignment of the organization's business strategy, the organization's operating model, enhancing the organization's capability, determining what the organization's investments will be, as well as risk and governance, and aligning that business need to a technology strategy. So we enterprise architects aren't going to start with cloud services. We start with business outcomes. The client wants to enhance revenue. What do we need to do it, for example? So as enterprise architects, what we're focused on, the questions we're asking are about, are what kind of capabilities will the business need in 3 to 5 years, for example? Or which platform should we standardize on? Where are we creating unnecessary complexity and risk, and how could we reduce that risk and reduce the complexity? How do technology decisions that we make as an organization support increased revenue or increased margins or increased organizational resilience? So that's our focus as enterprise architect, where we're asking questions about. So how are we measured as enterprise architects? How is our success determined? And the most part, how are our career promotions determined? Well, if we can see that there's reduced technology sprawl in an organization and the organization's reduced their risk, they've reduced their attack footprint and their support, we win. And we're measured for that. Now, if we create better alignment between the organization's business needs and the technology strategies, and the organization flourishes, again, we're measured for that. So we're measured on faster decision-making at the executive level, clear roadmaps instead of reactive projects. So what we're there to do as enterprise architects is effectively be a strategy consultant to the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, the chief information officer, the chief operating officer on strategy. And I've been an enterprise architect, but I've been all these architects, and they're all great jobs. Now, a platform architect. Now, we're going to talk about platform architecture. And platform architects typically live somewhere in between that strategy world, where the enterprise architect worlds, but they're not focused on an individual workload like a solutions architect. Now, typically you think platform, you typically think subject matter expert, an expert on networking, for example, for a network architect, or an expert in security for a security architect, or an expert on multi-cloud solutions for, say, a cloud architect. So if we're using that, we can think of that platform architect focused on, say, cloud landing zones, and maybe identity patterns across the clouds that the organization would be using, for example, or certain things that are focused on that environment, where the platform architect, if they're a network architect, might think of the organization's IP addressing and their routing plans and their routing architectures. Big focused on the entire thing, but still detailed. And platform architects typically create guardrails. So the key is to make sure that if it's a cloud architect, they've created a landing pattern or some form of pattern that'll be easy to implement in any of the clouds quickly and easily, seamlessly, and because we've thought through all the trade-offs, what have you. Now, a platform architect is still focused on some pretty big things. Like, how will the team safely deploy the solution? How will the teams consistently deploy that solution without any, individual configuration errors, configuration drift? The platform architect might think about what kind of standards must every workload follow? Or how do we scale our cloud growth? Or how do we scale our data center growth without chaos? How might we embed security into everything we do? Security by design, default, whatever you want to call it. So a platform architect is typically trying to design for reuse and scale, as opposed to one-off customizations to make the organization's platform scale better. So if we're going to measure a platform architect's success, it's going to show up on, say, faster onboarding of teams, because maybe systems are simpler, fewer security exceptions, so we have a much more streamlined security environment, less operational friction, so it's taking less staff and less complexity to manage things, and things are simple, and changes are simple because things are architecturally sound. And we've got consistent architectures across the organization. So if that cloud architect is able to create the right guardrails, the right reference architecture patterns to enable teams to move faster without breaking things, then that platform is working, and it's working well. Now let's focus on solutions architecture. What's that solutions architect focused on? Typically speaking, one workload or a very specific pattern. They're delivery focused. So the solutions architect is obviously going to be the least strategic, but the most tactical here. So we have to have the right skills and do the right things at the right time. So the solutions architect will effectively be a support agent to the platform architects as also the enterprise architects, because they're going to dive much more technical into their single solution or single workload. So we might have a solutions architect focused on a single application, or a single application integration, or moving a single workload from, say, in the case of a cloud solutions architect, one workload from, say, a private cloud like a Nutanix cloud to a public cloud like an AWS cloud. So the solutions architect is going to take the direction that we enterprise architects create, and the technology platforms that the platform architects are going to create, and they're going to turn it into something real, where you take that virtual machine and you turn it into an AWS EC2 instance, or a Google Compute Engine instance, or say an Azure virtual machine, what have you, typically speaking. So the questions a solution architect might ask are, how do we meet the delivery requirements given the constraints that we have? Which services fit this particular workload? How do we balance cost, performance, and risk? And how do we deliver on time? So the solutions architect is kind of in between that platform architect and the engineers that are going to support them and the engineers that are going to build things. So how do you measure the success of a solutions architect? Well, you measure the solutions architect's success with one-time delivery, because it's one workload. And does the system meet the functional and non-functional requirements that it needs? Can the solution be deployed easily without manual rework and some kind of smooth handoff? So if the solution works and it scales and it doesn't create technical debt, for a solutions architect, that is success. So what are the critical mistakes people make? If they are now an enterprise architect, maybe they used to be a solutions architect, but they're still doing solutions architect things. And by focusing on the solutions architect things without leveraging the solutions architect, that enterprise architect, for example, can't focus on the big picture, can't focus on enhancing business capabilities, can't focus on spending enough time with stakeholders and key executives. So the key is, in the enterprise architect role, do things that make you a better enterprise architect. Same thing if you're a platform architect. If you are a network architect, you can't focus on just a single workload. For the most part, you've got to focus on all the networks in the entire organization. And that means if you're a solutions architect, that's where you have to become an expert on whatever product or services or things that are going to be using the workload that you typically do. But all architecture roles or business roles, they're all executive in some way, shape, or form. It's just a different skill. for the enterprise architect versus the platform architect versus the solutions architect. If you'd like to become an architect, maybe an enterprise architect or a security architect or a cloud architect or an AI architect, we hold 2 free weekly architecture webinars per week where we talk about what we do as architects, the skills you need as an architect, how to get hired as an architect, and it's live and free on Zoom, so you can ask me any architecture career questions you may have live and in real time. You can register for any of these free architecture webinars in the description of this video. While you're in the description of this video, we have many free resources to help you in your architect career. So check the description, maybe sign up for some. They'll be emailed to you, and I hope they're a big help in your enterprise architect or cloud architect or security architect career. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell to be notified of new videos to assist you with your architect career. This is Mike Gibbs signing off for now, and I hope to see you in a new video real soon. We're a webinar live on Zoom. Take care.